up on this Tuesday edition of Newsline at noon, can we expect a breakthrough in strained Korea-Japan ties? A top Japanese official is in Seoul this week for rare high-level talks amid pressure from Washington that both sides bridge their differences. China urges Malaysia to speed up its search for the missing Malaysia Airlines plane as its fate is still shrouded in mystery. Investigators say evidence so far does not strongly back a terrorist attack as a cause for the aircraft's disappearance. Plus, bringing a message of peace and love, Pope Francis will make the first papal visit to Korea in 25 years in August. These stories and more on Newsline at noon. Thanks for joining us. You're watching Newsline at noon. I'm Oh Jin-ju in Seoul.
Very good to have you with us. I'm Mark Broom. Our top story this lunchtime, the vice foreign ministers of Korea and Japan will meet for talks in Seoul on Wednesday for the first time in 8 months.
Yes, but with Korea continuing its demand that Tokyo must first apologize for its wartime crimes, no one is holding much hope of the two neighbors mending their frosty ties. Our Hwang Sung-hee has more.
Amid souring ties between South Korea and Japan, Japanese Vice Foreign Minister Akitaka Saiki will arrive in Seoul Wednesday for talks with his South Korean counterpart Cho Tae-yong. Seoul's foreign ministry says the two sides will exchange views on a range of issues with no fixed agenda, but the timing of the visit is notable. It comes just days after Korean Foreign Minister Byung-se called on Japan at a UN session to take responsibility for its sexual enslavement of women in the early 20th century. Roughly 200,000 women, mostly Korean, were forced to serve the Japanese military during the Second World War, and many are still waiting for a heartfelt apology from Japan. The United States has been urging the two neighbors to put history behind them and to mend ties, concerned the intensifying friction will affect their trilateral alliance, which is key for countering North Korean threats and keeping an increasingly assertive China in check. Japanese broadcaster TBS reported Monday the U.S. government expressed strong concern about Tokyo's move to review a landmark statement that acknowledges its forced sexual enslavement of women. The Kono statement, which was issued in 1993, was based on testimony from 16 Korean women. The Japanese government is now questioning the validity of the testimony. In April, U.S. President Barack Obama will try to resolve the diplomatic row when he visits Seoul and Tokyo for summit talks. Ahead of President Obama's trip, the three leaders will meet at the end of this month in The Hague for the Nuclear Security Summit. While some point to the possibility of a trilateral summit, the chances of the two neighbors shaking hands are slim. South Korean President Park Geun-hye has made it perfectly clear she will not sit down with a leader who fails to acknowledge his country's historic wrongdoing. Hwang Sung-hee, Arirang News.
The legitimacy of Korea's scandal-ridden spy agency is being called into question. Prosecutors raided the headquarters of the National Intelligence Service late Monday over suspicions it fabricated evidence in an espionage case. Arirang News' Yoo Ri-an has the story.
The case revolves around a former Seoul metropolitan government official, Yoo Woo-sung, who was accused of being a North Korean spy. Yoo was initially cleared, but the prosecution appealed the case, putting forth new documents as evidence he traveled to North Korea as late as 2006. Those documents were provided by the National Intelligence Service. The case began late last year when the prosecution found those documents it received were faked, raising suspicions the NIS had fabricated the documents to set the city government official up as a spy. Those suspicions gained traction after an NIS informant claimed he had forged the documents. The informant, identified as Kim, attempted suicide last week after leaving a note saying that NIS owed him money he was supposed to receive in return for forging documents. Prosecutors raided the NIS headquarters for over 7 hours on Monday to determine whether the spy agency had requested forged documents from Kim, or whether it knew that the documents it received from Kim were faked. The intensive crackdown came only hours after President Park Geun-hye expressed strong regret over the scandal and called for a thorough investigation into the case.
이 일과 관련한 실체적 진실을 조속히 정확하게 밝혀서 더 이상 국민적 의혹이 없도록 해야 할 것입니다.
This is the second time the prosecution has raided the spy agency since President Park came into office. The first time was in April last year when the NIS was suspected of meddling in the 2012 presidential election to drum up support for Park. Yurian, Arirang News.
Libyan government forces have intercepted a North Korea-flagged tanker after it had loaded $30 million worth of crude oil at a rebel-held port. A Libyan lawmaker says the vessel was seized at Al Sidra port and had not been damaged. Rebels at the port had been trying to sell oil without the permission of the Tripoli government. Mohammed El Hariri, a spokesman for Libya's state-owned National Oil Corporation, says the ship is now being escorted to western Libya. Libya's parliament has ordered a special force to be deployed to, quote, liberate all rebel-held oil ports. North Korean leader Kim Jong-un's lavish lifestyle and spending accounted for nearly half of what the young leader spent on the country's ballistic missile program in 2012. Citing the UN Commission of Inquiry's report on North Korea, the New York Times said Kim had spent a staggering $645 million on luxury goods such as cosmetics, cars and leather products. In the same year, Pyongyang spent $1.3 billion on its ballistic missile program. The amount Kim spent on luxury goods is also about 4 times what the United Nations requested last year for the country's food and humanitarian aid. Over now to the elections in North Korea. The communist state held its first parliamentary elections under the current leader, Kim Jong-un, which pundits say stand to further consolidate his base. The result? Well, you probably won't be that surprised to hear that 100% of the vote went to Kim. Our Connie Kim has the details.
North Korean leader Kim Jong-un has been elected to a new rubber stamp legislature in the nation's first parliamentary elections since he assumed power. The North's official Korean News Central Agency said Monday that Kim won with 100% of the vote.
All voters in the number 111 Mount Baekdu constituency voted for Kim Jong-un in the 13th Supreme People's Assembly.
The Supreme People's Assembly is North Korea's utmost sovereign organization, the equivalent to South Korea's National Assembly. The nationwide elections are expected to consolidate Kim's power base after the recent purge of close aides, including Jang Song-taek, was executed last year. Analysts say the elections will likely promote officials depending on their loyalty to the young leader. There is also a high possibility that Kim Jong-un's younger sister Kim Yo-jong will hold a key position in the Supreme People's Assembly. She was listed along with senior officials of the Central Committee of the ruling Workers' Party.
Korean Central Television called Kim Yo-jong after Hwang Byung-se, the vice department director of the Workers' Party. This means that Kim Yo-jong could hold a similar position because of when her name was announced.
North Korean experts speculate that Kim Yo-jong will replace her aunt Kim Kyung-hee in taking care of Kim Jong-un's slush funds. The turnover rate of the new Supreme People's Assembly, which has a total of 689 deputies, is expected to be 40%. Aside from Kim's appointment as deputy, the rest of the results have not been announced. Connie Kim, Arirang News.
President Park Geun-hye and visiting Canadian Prime Minister Stephen Harper will meet this Tuesday afternoon to discuss finalizing the free trade agreement between their two countries. Negotiations on the trade deal, which were suspended after Korea banned Canadian beef imports in 2008, picked up speed after the ban was lifted in 2012. The presidential office of Cheongwada says the two leaders will also look into expanding cooperation in the areas of investment, resources, and science and technology. The security situation on the Korean Peninsula and in Northeast Asia is also likely to top their summit agenda. President Baek and Prime Minister Harper first met on the sidelines of the APEC summit in Bali last October.
Stay up to date on the latest news out of Korea, connecting to our team of reporters about the issues that matter to Korea. On air, on your mobile, online. Find out more about Korea on Newsline at Noon with Mark Broom and Jin-ju.
I'm Jin-ju.
Market researcher Strategy Analytics said Thursday that LG Electronics brought in about... More than 72 hours have passed, but still no sign of Malaysia Airlines Flight 370. As the mystery deepens, authorities are widening the search area in an effort to locate the missing jetliner. One of the investigators in Malaysia says the two passengers travelling with stolen passports on the flight were not Asian-looking men. Paulie reports.
Malaysian authorities said Monday they had identified one of the two suspicious passengers of the missing airliner. Interpol earlier confirmed at least two passengers on board had been traveling on fake passports from Australia and Italy. Police Inspector Khalid Abu Bakar reportedly confirmed that the suspect is not a Malaysian, but could not divulge which country he was from yet. Meanwhile, China has lashed out at Malaysia's national carrier and aviation officials for the way it's handled the investigation of the Boeing 777 that disappeared over the East China Sea. Chinese state media has criticized Malaysian authorities for not contacting the families of the victims sooner and for the apparent lack of security checks. Beijing's foreign ministry has also urged Malaysia to step up its search efforts for the missing airliner and the 239 passengers on board.
This was a Malaysia Airlines aircraft, so it should be the Malaysian authorities that are mainly responsible for the search and rescue efforts. The Chinese government will also do all it can to participate in search and rescue efforts as well.
Malaysia Airlines flight MH370 took off from Kuala Lumpur on Saturday, but vanished from radar en route to Beijing. There have been sightings of oil slicks and reported pieces of debris, but international efforts have failed to find the wreckage even after 3 days of scouring the sea. As of Monday, 40 ships and 34 planes from 9 countries had joined the operations, with the search now expanded to the Malacca Strait and on land in Malaysia. Paul Yi, Arirang News.
Pope Francis will visit Korea in the summer, marking the first papal trip to the nation in 25 years. Officials say he will bring a special message of peace to the Korean peninsula. Kim Min-ji has the details.
Pope Francis will pay a visit to Korea in the summer. The Vatican and the Catholic Bishops' Conference of Korea confirmed Pope Francis will arrive in Korea on August 14th and spend 5 days here on the invitation of both the Korean government and the Korean Catholic Church.
Pope Francis of the Catholic Church will visit Korea from August 14th to the 18th.
During his trip, Pope Francis will attend the 6th Asian Youth Day event, a festival of Asian Catholic followers from several nations in the central city of Daejeon, and also preside over a beatification ceremony of 124 Korean martyrs who were killed during the Joseon dynasty for their beliefs. The Pope will also pay a courtesy call to President Park Geun-hye. Cardinal Andrew Yum-Soo-jung, who heads the Seoul Diocese, said the papal visit would be a big pleasure and blessing for Korea. The presidential office of Cheongwada also welcomed the visit, saying it could bring reconciliation and peace to the Korean peninsula.
We hope Pope Francis' trip will provide an opportunity to spread a message of love and peace, not only on the Korean peninsula, but across Northeast Asia.
Pope Francis will become the third pope to visit Korea, and the first since Pope John II came in October 1989. Kim Min-ji, Arirang News.
Phase 2 of a massive medical strike has begun here in Korea after tens of thousands of doctors walked off the job on Monday. For the next week and a half or so, doctors taking part in the strike will cut their work hours and limit time spent with patients. Our Hwang Sung-hee has the details.
The medical strike has just begun. After Monday's walkout, the Korean Medical Association is progressing to the next round of its strike as planned. While those taking part in Monday's strike refused to provide any medical services, starting Tuesday through March 23rd, doctors will turn to a work-to-rule action. This means they won't work more than 40 hours a week, which is around 10 hours fewer than usual, and will treat patients for no longer than 15 minutes. A full 6-day strike is then planned to begin on March 24th, which could also include the closing of emergency rooms and intensive care centers. If residents and interns participate in the 2-week strike too, there are concerns this will affect the public, considering they work up to 100 hours a week. Although some patients were inconvenienced by Monday's walkout, it didn't create as much chaos as initially feared. The government has reiterated it will react strongly to illegal actions that put the health of the public at risk. The health ministry estimates around 29% of doctors at hospitals and local clinics took part in Monday's walkout, while the Medical Association puts the figure at 49%. As big as that discrepancy are the stark differences in opinion over the government's health reform plans, which prompted the KMA strike. KMA doctors are against government plans to introduce a telemedicine system that would allow for patients in remote areas to be diagnosed and treated via webcam, smartphone, or even email, saying this will impair the quality of medical services. The KMA is also up in arms over the government's move to run for-profit subsidiaries. Some doctors are worried the reforms could eventually lead to privatization of the medical sector. The Medical Association says it expects even more doctors to take part in the second round of strikes. Hwang Sung-hee, Arirang News.
The government is seeking to boost the nation's cloud computing industry with stronger support for small and mid-sized companies in the sector. The Science and Future Planning Ministry and the Public Administration Ministry will sign an MOU as early as late this month to develop a cloud computing platform based on open source software. Once the platform is complete, SMEs will be able to use it to develop additional software, which is expected to cut their infrastructure spending by nearly 75%. The government also plans to support collaborations among these companies to help develop new business models. Korea's cloud computing market is expected to expand fivefold by 2017 compared to last year to $2.3 billion. Reports are hinting Google will once again tap LG as the manufacturer of its upcoming Nexus Smartwatch and next-generation Nexus 6 smartphone, which are slated for release later this year. Kim Ji-yeon reports.
Google has partnered up with LG for the production of a new smartwatch and other wearable devices. The U.S. tech giant is likely to release its flagship smartphone, the Nexus 6, this fall, and the device is reportedly based on LG's upcoming G3 smartphone. Google and LG had collaborated in 2012 on the Nexus 4, and it was an instant hit with Android fans. Google is also moving to expand the Android operating system on its smartphones to its wearable devices. Google Senior Vice President Sundar Pichai says in 2 weeks, the company will release the software programs for its wearable devices, including smartwatches and smart jackets, which are equipped with sensors. The upcoming Nexus smartwatch will be Google's entry into the rapidly expanding smartwatch market. It will join Samsung's Galaxy Gear and an anticipated iWatch from Apple. Samsung unveiled smartwatches with its independent operating system, the Tizen, last month.
The Gear 2 and the Gear Fit. We will release these incredible devices in nearly 150 countries.
The market for wearable devices is expected to expand to around $30 billion by the year 2018. Kim Ji-yeon, Arirang News.
Good day, I'm Eunice Kim, and here are your headlines from around the world. NATO says it will send reconnaissance planes to help monitor the crisis in Ukraine. This as Russia tightens its control of the Crimea ahead of the scheduled referendum vote on Sunday. A NATO spokesman said the all-clear was given on Monday, adding the planes will only take the flight over alliance territory in neighboring Poland and Romania. This as the World Bank said it will increase its support to Ukraine to up to $3 billion this year if the government implements economic reforms. Meanwhile, more fist-clenching in the Crimea, where armed men, likely Russian troops and local militia, stormed a military hospital and took control. There are also reports of gunfire fired in the air at a naval post in the Crimea as a group of 10 unidentified men moved into the post to demand 10 trucks from the Ukrainian staff there. Today marks the third anniversary of the March 11th earthquake, tsunami, and nuclear disaster in Japan. And ahead of it, Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe said he would resume operations of Japan's nuclear reactors. During a nationally televised address Monday, Abe said he understood the lingering concerns, but assured the public that the restarted reactors would have passed extremely strict safety tests. The nuclear shutdown had pushed Japan to import expensive fossil fuel, causing the economy to post deep trade deficits over the last 18 months. Meanwhile, thousands gathered in front of Parliament in a protest rally, including former Japanese Prime Minister Naoto Kan. On Sunday, residents in Iwaki City near the Fukushima nuclear plant remembered the tens of thousands who died in that tsunami that was triggered by the 9.0 magnitude earthquake. Against a backdrop of Iranian-supplied missiles seized by Israeli Navy ships last week, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu on Monday said the world was deluding itself on Iran's intention to pursue nuclear weapons. Netanyahu has been an outspoken critic of the deal Iran and 6 world powers had struck for limited relief from sanctions in exchange for Tehran curbing some of its sensitive nuclear activities. On display were M302 surface-to-surface rockets that Israel has said were bound for militants in Gaza, which could be used to strike Israel. Netanyahu urged the world to wake up from its self-deception and stop Iran from developing nuclear weapons. And over in Austin, Texas, USA, ex-NSA contractor turned whistleblower Edward Snowden made a rare public appearance via a web link-up at the South by Southwest Interactive Festival. Speaking from Russia, Snowden urged the audience of tech enthusiasts to help fix the U.S. government's surveillance of its citizens. It marks the first time Snowden has directly addressed a group of Americans since fleeing the country last June. And during a Q&A session, Snowden also said he would do it all over again if he had to, adding that the U.S. Constitution was, quote, being violated on a massive scale.
It's going to be a beautiful day today. Temperatures are warming up nicely with highs in the low teens in the upper parts of the peninsula and in the mid-teens down south. And the whole country will enjoy sunny blue skies, and we won't have to worry about polluted air, so it should be a perfect day to go out and soak up some vitamin D from the sun this afternoon. But as you may have noticed, the air is still quite dry, and it's been a week since a dry weather watch was issued, and dry weather warning is still in place for the southeastern part of the country. But thankfully, we do have some relief from the dry air on the way. Rain is in the forecast nationwide tomorrow afternoon, so you'll need an umbrella before you go out. Also, temperatures will drop a couple of degrees, so please be prepared for that. And now it's time to take a look at the readings for today. The afternoon high in Seoul will rise to 12. Daegu and Gwangju will top out at 17 and 16 respectively, while Busan gets up to 14 under lots of sunshine. Now for other regions, it looks like down on Jeju will climb up to 14. Daejeon will reach 15, while the top temperature on Mount Kumgang will be at 5 this afternoon. Now that's all for Korea, and here's the global forecast for viewers around the world.
And those are the stories we're following at this hour.
Join us again for more updates on the day's headlines on our next newscast at 2 p.m. Korea time.
And Jinju and I will be back again at the same time on Wednesday. Until then, goodbye.